Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with Pro Wrestling Logic, and today we're going to start a news series. Also, later on tap for today, should my schedule allow. Please understand I am self-employed. I run multiple businesses, and so this is a side project for me. I don't always have the time I'd like to get to projects related to Pro Wrestling Logic, which reminds me I want to invite everybody. If you think you'd be a good fit for the audio on this channel, please feel free to PM me on YouTube, and we can talk further, or give me a shout-out on social media at PO Perception. And because we're looking to build a team, we're looking to take this to be the largest pro wrestling and MMA YouTube channel outside of a major national or international company within the next 5 years. That's the goal, and that's what our backers are here to want to do. Anyway, bit of news, and we're going to start a news section. I don't know that it'll be daily, but it'll be several times a week. It crossed my email box this morning that WWE and all sports teams have been deemed necessary businesses. And it got me to thinking, and then I went off and did something for work. For those that don't know, I work as a business and life coach, and so I deal with all sorts of personalities. I've dealt with 12,000 people in 40 countries over the last 13 years. So there's nothing I haven't seen or heard. And it got me thinking, though, about narcissism in Vince McMahon. The reason it got me thinking is because there is a memorandum now that allows all sports teams to continue operations as normal, that is, to have games or whatever have you, matches in the case of wrestling and MMA, provided there are no spectators present. This is in the state of Florida. The reason it got me thinking about Vince is twofold. Number one, he pressed forward during the entire unfolding of these events as though he was going to be untouchable. That is very common for a former billionaire or a multimillionaire to do. The top upper echelon elite are very common with not being willing to take no for answers, and also being very willing to manipulate situations in their direction. Secondarily, many people will be aware that McMahon and the McMahon family have a direct link to President Donald Trump, going back some 30-plus years. Trump was at WrestleMania 4 and 5, hosting the events at his Trump Plaza casinos, and then later Trump involved in an on-camera role around the time of WrestleMania 23 with Bobby Lashley and Umaga in the hair versus hair match, McMahon versus Trump. So there's a precedent of relationship between the leader of the country and Vincent Kennedy McMahon, not Vincent J. Vincent J. has passed away. Anyway, I don't know that there haven't been phone calls between the two behind the scenes. We don't know. I don't think we'd ever know that, even if there were. But suffice to say that it is possible, especially with Linda McMahon, Vince's wife, having a role as the director of the Small Business Administration for the first part of Mr. Trump's presidency. All of these things together to say that it is entirely possible that Vince McMahon used political influence and or funding to elicit favor in the eyes of Mr. Trump. Now, is that an accusation? No, just an affirmation of possibility, which I'd love for other people to weigh in on. Anyway, I do a lot of work with those who deal with family members, friends, and partners, and former partners who have narcissistic personality disorder. It got me to thinking about the relationship between Vince McMahon and narcissism, Vince McMahon and MPD, Vince McMahon and other personality disorders. Now, small caveat and disclaimer. Although I've spent 23 years studying various forms of social distance and social dissonance, I don't use the term mental illness because I think we're all ill to some degree. I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect mind. In any event, I do not have the ability to diagnose But I do have the ability to share information and encourage people to investigate for themselves what they think might be going on. Let me just run down the symptoms over the next 15 minutes or so of that disorder, and we can see if they apply to Vince. Because I think it'd be valuable to really know that. Signs and symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder include, but are not limited to, grandiose sense of self-importance. Now, we all know that through public portrayal, newsletters, and even released documentaries and DVDs and the like, that Vince has always seen himself as something one of a kind, something special, even going back to 1985 when he nearly had to declare bankruptcy due to the potential failure of WrestleMania, and before that when he brazenly put together the national expansion in the face of a territorial system that had worked for decades prior. Certainly, it could be easily stated that he was grandiose during those decision-making processes, and that his sense of self-importance is certainly higher than most, if not obsessively higher. So we have that going for us in the assessment. The next thing to consider, lives in a fantasy world that supports their delusions of grandeur. Well, let's see. If we listen to the history of Vince McMahon, and we listen to the fact that he is very disconnected from reality as it relates to anything outside of the wrestling bubble and or the bubble that he's created for himself within his own company, to the point of not knowing pop culture references, to the point of not knowing movie references, to the point of not knowing how certain segments of the population correlate. I remember there was a time that about 10 years ago, as part of a backstage skit, McMahon used a racial slur in a pre-tape with John Cena. That was quite a bit of controversy at the time, and it was allowed to air. Thus, I think it is reasonable to believe that Vince, certainly at the very least, believes that because of his position of power and authority, he's untouchable and does not need to conform to social normalcy at any point or in any way. Let's see. So, needs constant praise and admiration. Now, what sort of man would surround himself with 40 or so writers? That's the number at last count, or at least so what I've heard. I've actually heard anywhere from 25 to 40, but anyhow. What sort of man would surround himself with so many creative people, dozens of creative people, yet still need to be the only person that can make a final call on anything? The answer to that would be a narcissist. And obviously we've seen several occasions where the entire script of a evening's event needed to be thrown out because Vince didn't like one or two things in it. Again, narcissism, certainly the tendency to devalue the opinions of others and to inflate the opinions of one's own values. So, next on the list is sense of entitlement. Narcissists always consider themselves to be special, born leaders, individuals who are above reproach and above reprieve. These are individuals who believe that the world owes them something because of their contributions, no matter how great, and they should get whatever they want without any challenge. If you look at the history of Vince with sexual assault that was swept under the rug, going all the way back to the 80s, and or inappropriate conduct with certain women that he has employed over the years, most notably the 2001 Trish Stratus Barking Like a Dog segment, which at the time got major flack in Canada and I believe the UK. And I will continue this in a second as I have a work-related call.